Okay, it's the end of the session. I'm here. Well, here's Mr. Roscoe P. Coltrane. Roscoe, here, buddy. Yes is Roscoe's marker word, and this is Roscoe's roadmap to success. So we started off with what a greeting protocol one is. What I call it, very imaginative. But basically, I had the Guardian. I left a treat trail from the Guardian's front door to around a bend. So when Roscoe came out of his house, he couldn't see me. He got all these treats, and then when he came around the corner, I was sitting. So when I was sitting, and so that Roscoe approached me from the side. For dogs, for human, for dogs, a human front facing them is confrontational. From the side is more approachable. Behind you, you're defenseless. And I was sitting down. The taller I am, the more authoritative or more intimidating I can be to a dog. So what I'd like you to do is go through your phone, look for some people that you haven't seen for a while, your friends, who will listen to you and help you. And then have them. Now you need to practice that treat trail, like a treat trail, the same thing, but with nobody at the end of it, at least one time for every time that there's somebody there. I'd have you practice it a couple times before the next person shows up. So Roscoe comes out, gets all those treats. When he gets to the person, they hold out a treat to his side, and they keep on doing that until he'll take the treat from their hand. And if you won't take it from the hand, just have them toss it on the ground. And it doesn't have to be between you and him. If he is barking, throw the treat behind him. If he looks stiff, throw the treat behind him. When he barks and growls and lunges, he's saying, "You're too close to me." And he doesn't recognize I can move away as a dog. Well, you can help him by throwing the treat behind him, and then that increases the distance and will help him feel relaxed. Try to avoid looking directly at him. Don't talk to him. You could say sit a little bit, but just for the most part, at the beginning, you're just going to be sitting. He comes up to you, hold the treat out, let him have it. After he licks it up, leave your hand there like that. He'll probably come and lick it a second time. When he moves away, then grab another treat, do the same thing. Do it about a couple of treats. And then when you feel comfortable, he feels comfortable, say sit. If he sits, say yes the instant his butt hits the ground. Yes is his marker word. As soon as he sits, yes, and give him that treat. And do that until he takes about 2 or 3 treats that way. Then what we want you to do is we want you to get out of sitting on your butt to kind of at a crouching position. But if you stand up when he's here, he's probably going to lunge and nip at you. So when you get ready to do this, throw a treat, a Charlie bear preferably, about 5 feet away. He goes over there and you rock up until you're basically in this position. I can't kind of hold it, but I'm crouching down. And then he comes back up and I offer a treat to the side once and I ask him to sit. If he'll sit, I do that maybe once or twice, then I throw another treat, and then I stand up. When he comes back to me, again, I give him a treat from my hand from the side. Don't lean over him, don't talk to him, and then I'll ask him to sit. If he sits, say yes, give him that treat, and then you and his guardian are going to take a little walk around just the courtyard. And throughout the walk, every once in a while, you can ask him to sit, but he likes to kind of muzzle punch and nip at heels. So to prevent him from doing that, once you get done and you stand up, you start walking, I want you to hold it. If Roscoe's right here, hold the treat over here in front of him and just kind of, or hold it up like this. Show him like, I'm about to give you this treat, and take about 2 steps, say yes and give him a treat. Then pull another one out, walk about 3 or 4 steps, say yes and give him a treat. Then about 4 or 5 steps, yes and give him a treat. And this is just arbitrarily how I'm saying it. It might be every step you say yes and give him a treat at first. But eventually you want to do it where multiple steps. And eventually you get to the point where that guest can walk all the way around the courtyard holding the treat out. And when they get done, they say yes and give it to him. We're preventing him from practicing targeting him and pulling on our pant legs. So this is a nice greeting for you to do. And if you can have friends come over 7 days in a row, just tell your friend, hey, I've got, working with this dog, I got a dog behaviorist who came over and gave me some suggestions. One of the things is I need somebody that he hasn't met before, that's one of my friends that can help. What if I grab a bottle of wine? You can come over, we can hang out on the deck afterwards, but you can help me greet him, give you a chance to meet him. He's a cute pup. Then they come over, they're your guest. They're in on it with you. You don't feel the pressure of he's attacking a guest or a stranger or something like that. There's somebody who's in here with you, and you already know them. And then after that, going for the little mini walk, as soon as you come in the door, immediately give them a treat. Don't ask them to sit, just immediately give them a treat or drop it on the ground. The instant you cross the threshold and the door closes. When you change from outside to inside, all of a sudden things get a little bit different. So we want to make sure we're carrying that positive energy inside. And then after you drop the first one, the door's closed, ask him to sit. He sits, give him that treat, take your shoes off, because we take our shoes off in this house. And then you can go ahead and come in, and if he's kind of if you feel him by your heels, do that same exercise. Hold the treat, take a couple steps, yes, and give him a treat, then sit down. And then when you sit down, kind of ignore him. If he comes up to you, then you can, if you have some more treats, ask him to sit and say yes when he sits, give him a treat, but only ask him once. If you say sit and he doesn't sit, that's his way of saying, I don't feel like you have the authority to tell me what to do, or I don't feel comfortable enough to be near you, or I don't feel like sitting. Don't beg him. Say it once, and if he does it, you say your marker word yes and give him a treat. If he doesn't do it, nothing happens. You just go back to having your conversation. And eventually he kind of, if he's sitting at your feet or laying down or doing stuff like that, then you could ask him to do a little bit of hand targeting exercise. And if you don't know how to do that, ask the guardian. She's happy to show you how to do that. And so now you're holding your hand out. He touches his nose to your hand. You say yes and put the treat on your hand without moving your hand. Then check over here. So this is a good way to indicate whether he's comfortable enough. If you go like this, boop, and he doesn't come and stick his nose on your hand, he's saying, I'm not comfortable enough with you. We haven't reached that level of our relationship yet. And that's okay. You'll get there. The more practice, but the person needs to not chase him around, not try to talk to him, not to lean and engage with him. He needs to be able to engage and come to you on his own. We do the hand targeting because it kind of triggers him to come, but if he's not comfortable, he won't do it. So it's a way to open the threshold, and it indicate whether the dog is comfortable or not. Now, the guardian, you also mentioned going to visit some relatives, I believe, in Calabasas. And so what I would do is kind of when you get there, it's a long car ride. So I'd probably stop about 5 minutes away from getting to their house, find an area where he can walk around and sniff. When we're on a car trip, we're kind of all, discombobulated. We're in the car. Give him a chance to kind of stretch his legs, urinate, kind of sniff a little bit, kind of snap out of it. Then get back in the car, go to your relatives, call your relatives and have them meet you outside. And you can do the same thing on the trail. So what you would do if you're hiking on a trail and you want to meet some people, have them already there. And instead of walking up and chatting with them, that's the time he might bark at them. So what you want to have them do is, maybe when you have the person have some treats ahead of time. As they're walking, you kind of walk towards where they're at. So when you get to their house, they're already waiting for you on the sidewalk by the street. So you get out of the car and you drop a treat, ask Roscoe to sit. Your relatives have treats, and you kind of give them a nod and the signal, and then they start walking in the direction that you're going to walk, and you and Roscoe follow behind them. But the kids now have some treats. The kids are dropping a treat about every 2 or 3 steps. And Roscoe's walking up behind them, getting those treats. And eventually you have them walk a little slower and you walk a little faster, so eventually you can catch up to them. And now the kids are saying, hey, just drop a treat at first and then ask him to sit. If he won't sit, only going to say it once, then we walk a little bit more and they just drop treats. So we want to drop treats ahead of time so he just looks at, when I follow them, they're dropping treats. This is like these are the best people ever to follow. And then we're asking how comfortable you are. Will you sit for them? If you won't, then we just continue walking. Walking allows a lot of distractions. Moving forward is really important for dogs. It's how they process things. And so we're doing this, and make sure we don't surrounding him. We're just very casual about going for this walk, and we kind of meet up with this group. We become part of this group. This group is emanating treats at first on the ground, and then eventually they're giving it to me. Eventually they're telling me to sit, and I'm listening to them. And if we get to the point where the kids can say sit, and he sits, then the kids can even take the leash, as long as everybody's comfortable with that. And the kids should not be pulling and jerking on the leash. We want to have a loose leash. And then the kids, every couple steps, stop, sit. Yes, give them a treat, walk a couple more paces. Go for like a 15, 20-minute walk, and then walk in the house. So when you walk in the house, do the same thing I talked about here. As soon as you walk in the house, immediately give him a treat. Now, it's not his house, so it'll be a little bit different dynamic, but we want to make sure that we carry over all the benefits that we built up outside of our actions inside the house. And the kids could do some hand targeting, things along those lines. Bring your dog bed. Remember, anytime that he goes to the dog bed, that is his safe place. The kids are not allowed to talk to him, to pet him, to engage with him, or even walk over near him. Dogs have a fight or flight mode. He barks a lot because he's saying, I'm uncomfortable with that person this close to me. Well, if we give him a safe place that he can go to, and when he goes there, people respect that safe place, then he's going to feel less of a need to bark and react. Now, let me see, what else can we do? Something else I wanted to go over popped out of my brain, but it'll come back to me. Oh, yes. See, how quick. You should never say I can't remember. It tells your brain to stop looking. Always say it'll come back to me, and just like me, it just did. So what I would do is I would tell the kids, as long as the mom and dad are okay with candy, and just say, look, this dog guy that came by and helped me, he explained to me that when I pet Roscoe, I'm essentially saying please or thank you. And so for the kids, I would just say, so anytime you want to pet Roscoe, if you tell him to sit and he sits, pet him here, 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 here. But if you say sit one time and he sits, say yes, and then you can pet him or give him a treat. And every time you do that and come back and tell me, I'm going to take an M&M, a Reese's Pieces, a Skittle, or whatever the kid's candy preference is, and put it in a little jar for the kid or a little mug. And then at the end of the day, the kids can have that as their snack after dinner or however you want. But if also, let's say the kids start going over to where Roscoe's dog bed is. They say, oh, you have to leave him alone. If you get any closer, you're going to lose an M&M. So you have a merit system for the kids to earn these. And the kids can't say, I just petted him 15 times, I need 15 M&Ms. Oh, you have to tell me in between each one, only one time per and only one per minute. You incorporate some sort of safeguard. But now the dog practices listening to the child. The child is asking the dog to sit. And if the dog won't sit, that's the dog's way of saying, I'm not comfortable sitting next to you. So that's an indication. Make sure the kids understand they can only ask sit once. If he doesn't sit, then they have to walk away. But eventually, Roscoe, when they say sit, he'll sit because he wants to get that pet and that treat. And give those kids some treats. They can give them treats as well and explain the concept of marker words. If you have any questions on the marker words, let me know. I have a video on that I can send you, and I have videos on everything else that we're going to talk about here. Let me kind of summarize the video now. We've kind of gone over the greeting protocols. So first thing we did was talked about marker words. Yes, this is marker words. You use that the instant the dog does the thing that you want, not when you give a treat. Almost never when you give a treat. So the dog sits, you say yes, and then he gets a treat after that. So the marker is your way of saying thank you. Also, you could use a clicker. So his butt hits the ground, you click, then you give him a treat. Don't reach for the treat. So if he sits, don't reach for the treat as he's sitting. Wait for him to sit, then click, then go for your treat, then reward him. And again, only ask one time. Now, for the marker words, that's also if the thing has duration. So if I'm asking a dog to stay, I would say stay, and then we're waiting for 5 seconds. I count to 5, and then I would say yes and give him the treat because I'm marking the conclusion of that activity, staying for 5 seconds, completing potty, waiting for me to attach the leash or whatever it is. So if the thing has duration, click or say your marker word at the end of it. For your marker word, make sure you're saying the same inflection. Yes and yes are 2 different words to dogs, and the excitement will often get them to bounce up. Remember, excited is not the same thing as happy when it comes to dogs. Also, let me talk about body language. I didn't really talk about this during the session, so let me kind of go over this with you. This mouth right here, this is my buddy Farley. We've lost him. He's waiting for me at Great Beyond. But Farley, his mouth is open here, and that's a normal, natural body mechanic for dogs to have their mouth open. Let me see. I'm going to make sure that we're still filming. Yes, we are. Okay. So if you see the mouth go from this to closed, and the dog goes from being kind of loose and relaxed to stiff with a closed mouth and holds its breath, that means a bark and a lunge is about to come. So if you see the mouth close and the dog gets stiff, you need to call and do the hand target or call him and drop some treats and get him to move away from whatever that is. You have to identify whatever it is he's uncomfortable with. So the more that you manage the situation and get him out of there, the less he needs to bark and lunge. So that's you, and that's why it's really important. Like for Wilshire, don't walk him across Wilshire. Carry him across Wilshire, or don't walk him in areas that he's uncomfortable, because then he's practicing feeling uncomfortable and he's practicing that emotion, or not that emotion, but that feeling. And so we don't want them to practice that. That's why putting the little blocker here and putting the paper in the windows is important. It prevents the problem from getting worse. It doesn't help it get it better, but stopping it from getting worse is an important part of that process. Okay, so the marker words and then the cue is the word that we use. It's an indicator for the dog to do the action. The cue should come before the action. We should only say the cue word once. Cue words are best if they're one-word cues because that's what dogs hear, the first word we say, and the pronunciation matters. And the word should sound unique, not like any other words. Now, first, there might be a little carryover. You might say sit, and then lure him into a sit, and then say yes and give him the treat. But eventually say sit, he sits, and you just give him the treat. You don't have to use the marker or the clicker because he knows what we're doing. The second thing we went over was hand targeting. Remember, I have a video for that. I'm happy to share it with you. Practice that a lot yourself in the house. So eventually you can practice with guests, you can practice outside and use it to redirect him and reposition him as we talked about. We also talked about the positive interrupter. So you can either make a sound like, which is my preferable one, or you can say beep, 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 or puppy, 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 high pitch, saying it 3 or 4 times in a row right away. Also, while I'm thinking about it, the Guardian, we'll get better at this with time, but one thing I did notice is throughout the session, there were a number of times where you were late on using your marker word. The dog would sit, you would say yes right before you put the treat in your hand. So the instant the butt hits around, yes, then I reach for the treat, then I give it to the dog. So don't confuse them. Cookie in the corner where we threw the treats is the only time that you would actually say yes when the dog gets the treat, because that's the goal of that exercise. Okay, so again, I've got a video on hand targeting as well as the cues and all that, so message me if you're confused about those things. We also went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Now, petting with a purpose is basically a way of teaching the dog to say please or thank you. I identify sitting or laying down as the dog's way of saying please or thank you. So when we have children, we have to teach them manners, boundaries, what's appropriate, how to ask for things, how to not ask for things. And we have a lot of lessons that are essentially a do-over. Daddy, go get me some pizza. Would you like to ask for that again? Daddy, could you please get me some pizza? And the dad goes and gets the pizza to reinforce that, yes, that please worked. It mattered. We don't do this for dogs. We don't teach them to say please or thank you. We do this with this exercise. So next time he nudges you, tell him to sit one time. If he sits, say your marker word and pet him under his chin. And then you could invite him on your lap or pet him or do whatever the thing is that you want. If you say sit and he does not sit, then go lean back in your chair, watch more TV, check some emails on your phone. Show him that I'm living my best life doing something else. There's no punishment. There's no correction. He can do what he wants. He's free will. But he doesn't get rewarded. He doesn't get what he wants without doing what you asked him to do first. And you're only going to ask him one time. After enough, and if he's already sitting here, ask him to sit here, or ask him to lay down. Don't ask for a shake. Sit or lay down. He has to change his state. After a while, he'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for attention. When he does, make sure you mark and pet that. Otherwise, he's going to go back to nudging you. It's going to take you a lot of time to remember this. You don't have anybody to remind you about this. So if you find yourself, he comes up and nudges you, you're petting him, catch yourself, don't say, darn it. Stop and say sit. When he sits, and say yes and pet him on his chin. If he doesn't, disengage. And so it'll take you little habits and try to remember to pet here, 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 and try to avoid reaching over the head. You can do it a little bit, but if your dog moves away, remember those signs of consent: turning away, backing away, lowering the head, crouching, cowering, baring the teeth, moving away, refusing to look at you, or always the dog says, I don't agree, or I don't want that to happen. So the more we listen to that, the less that he feels he needs to bare his teeth or bark or growl, because people are listening to me and doing the thing that we want that the dog is asking us to do. When it comes to his body, he gets to have some leeway in saying, I feel comfortable you approach me or not, so that he doesn't have to feel like he has to bite or bark. Okay, so that's petting with a purpose. The other flip side of that is what I call celebrating, which is basically rewarding the dog when it offers the behaviors that you want without any influence from you whatsoever. So if I'm sitting here and Roscoe came up to me, when he got here, I would say yes and pet him. If he came and sat down at my feet, I'd say yes and pet him. When he laid down, yes and pet him. If he looks at me, yes and pet him. When he drinks his water, yes and pet him. When he poops, when he eats his food, if he wants to get on the dog bed, if he wants to get on your lap. So if he jumps in your lap without permission, you don't want him to be up there, just stand up. He'll jump down, then tell him to sit. If he sits, then invite him on your lap. Make the lap something, nothing wrong with the dog being in your lap, but for this way, let's set it up so that he has to ask permission to get on your lap, and you reward him for good behavior. If you sit, I will invite you to enjoy this lap, but if you don't want to sit, that's fine, but you don't get this privilege. Let me see. Make a list of all the things that you like him doing, and don't disregard eye contact, especially out on walks. If you're on a walk and he looks up at you, have a treat in your hand at all times on a walk. Anytime he looks at you, yes, and hold the treat out, he's going to come back to you, get that treat. Anytime he gets to the end of the leash, say yes, hold the treat out, he's going to come back to you. If he's lagging behind you, drop a treat here. He's going to cause him to come up and get you, get that treat. But also keep in mind, if he is pulling back, he's lagging, he's saying, I'm uncomfortable with the environment. The less that we force him into doing things. Remember, dogs that are reactive are doing some out of a fearful base, and that comes from frustration, anxiety, and stress. And so if he's uncomfortable, he doesn't want to cross Wilshire, and we force him to do it, that's going to make him more uptight, more uncomfortable. So that would be better just to carry him across Wilshire or drive him across Wilshire. Like I said, trying to drive him to a neighborhood where he doesn't have to cross Wilshire for a while, for about a month or so would be great. And then after he's gotten to that neighborhood, he walks. And then you could start maybe every other walk. We walk from here to there, but we want to make sure that he's doing it in a positive way so he's not uncomfortable. We also talked about, we talked about rules, not being allowed in the kitchen where we're eating, not being allowed around any humans who are eating, not around in the kitchen where we're preparing food, not around humans within 7 feet of any humans who are eating. Have to sit before I invite you on the couch or open the door for you or put on your collar or prepare your food or whatever it is. These are all ways for him to practice a little self-control. Yes, I want to eat that food, but I'm sitting here waiting for permission to go and eat the food that's on my bowl, or I'm sitting here waiting for you to start preparing the food and putting it in the bowl. The more that you ask him to sit and wait for things, the better equipped he is to restrain himself from barking at someone or lunging somebody in the elevator or wherever else it is. Speaking of the elevator, what I would do is you could kind of do a version of the exercise that we have in the video above, but it's a little bit different. So what I would do is maybe enlist the help of our friend Mary or anybody else that lives in the building, and basically have him in the elevator, exercise him first, and then have him in the elevator, and as soon as that person gets in, just start dropping treats on the ground. and drop a treat, and when he looks up at them, click, and then drop another treat. Looks up at them, click, and drop. But you got to go boom, boom, boom like that fast. Put the treats, make sure that he is so interested in treats, he doesn't have a chance to snarl or lunge or look at those people. Now, the elevator is tough. I would probably do the exercise we did above with that person walking before until we get comfortable, until we do the video, until we do it in the elevator, because that's a confined area. One thing I forgot to go over in the video above is when we're having Mary walk back and forth, well, we do that until he loses interest. I think I mentioned in the video, we had to shoot it twice, so I can't remember if it was first or second attempt. But when he starts sniffing the ground or grooming himself, that's an indication I'm kind of almost bored with his exercise. Then we take 5 steps closer to Mary and have that person still pass perpendicular to us. And this might take several practice sessions, but eventually it should be at the point where the person's walking back and forth right in front, and he's looking away and looking up at us to see, when am I going to get that treat? We also talked about exercise. Remember, sniffing on walks burns more energy than walking, so walk for duration instead of a destination. Playing fetch is a great way to burn energy. And remember, exercise is best done every 2 to 4 hours, and you can also exercise him before things to set him up for success. And the amount of exercise might vary depending on whatever the activity you're going to do next is. Let me see, we could also get him a weighted backpack, a doggy harness that has pockets here. You can put weight in it. That gives him a job, which makes him less likely to bark. Also, it's going to burn a little bit more energy on walks. Just make sure you check with your vet to make sure that they're okay with him carrying that. Some dogs have musculature and other physical issues. We don't want them to be carrying stuff. But there's also mental stimulation, lick mats, feeding out of a snuffle mat. Training is a way to burn energy. Scent games. Remember, Google scent games and look for a couple that you can use. And that cookie in the corner is where we threw the treat and said hunt, and then yes, and then when he got it, we said here or come, and he came back to us. We said yes and gave him the treat. So we're sneaking in some practice at recall, as well as teaching him to go look in an area for treats. And eventually, what you can do after you've done it enough, hide the treats there when he's away, and then come in the area and say hunt, and he goes and searches and he's sniffing the ground. Remember, using the nose controls a tremendous, about 2/3 of the dog's brain, and it's very draining of energy. So come up with a system where you're exercising him before and after, or before things to set him up for success, and getting it every couple hours, or before things are going on. We also talked about rules. I think we already talked about rules here, I guess. And so the exercise that we did above is make sure you're not doing it when there's a lot of craziness going on. If there's a kid, there's a siren. I think I mentioned the video in the first one. I can't remember if I did the second one or not. But if there's a siren, there's a wailing baby, there's construction going on, that's not a good time to do that exercise. And I would not just do that exercise here in the hallway. You need to do it in different parts of your building, outside of your building. Dogs need a lot of variety to practice things. Remember that when we did the loading exercise, I had you move around to do that. So anything you're teaching your dog, make sure you practice a lot of variety. Keep the practice to 3 minutes or less, unless the activity is something to go beyond that. And always end on a good one. That's the most important repetition. Now, if you have any questions, please text me. You can call me as well. Don't email me. I get about 150 emails a day. But if you have any questions, text me. It's very normal for us to need to make adjustments a week or two after the session, so I'm here for you. All right, well, this is Roscoe's Roadmap to Success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.